deep in the heart of Texas.
We're in the business of winning.
Don't bet against me.
I don't bet anyway.
Lose your life.
Hello everyone, Michael Jordan fans are the best, and today we're going to be having a debate between myself and NMB Sports on who's greater, Bob Pettit or Dirk Nowitzki. We're going to wait for everyone to come in because that's how TikTok does. So we'll have these guys come in, we'll have our judges being Politicus Rex and T Perfect. It should be coming in soon to get that done, along with NMB Sports. And one of the things with this debate is that I wanted to represent Bob Pettit because many people look at this guy and they ignore how great he was across all time. And it's something that I think needs to be addressed in respect to talking about the greatest power forwards of all time. Whether you think he's the greatest or one of the greatest or not, I think this is an opportunity for you to get a better understanding of the man's career. But welcome, T Perfect. How are you today, sir?
Hey, great one. Looking forward to this one. How are you doing?
Great. Just waiting on Nick and Politicus Rex if he comes in. But what are your thoughts on this debate, Bob Pettit and Dirk Nowitzki? What are your thoughts on each of these players?
I think this is a great debate just because I think generally both players fly under the radar to some degree. I mean, you never really hear them, being brought up and, hey, he's the best power forwards of all time. I mean, obviously I think Dirk gets a little bit more clout, but Pettit, I don't think a lot of people really take the time to go back and study his career just to see how dominant he was in his time and space. And so, yeah, a lot of great points. I think a lot of meat on both both plates to have. So I look forward to it.
Absolutely. We got Politicus Rex and NMB Sports here. I guess.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Sweet.
I didn't know you had a face underneath your facial hair.
Yeah, I know, right? I've been getting that a lot.
But before we get to you, Nick, Politicus Rex, what do you think about this debate between these two players of Bob Pettit and Dirk Nowitzki?
Well, I mean, all it is generational. Nobody today knows anything about Bob Pettit other than, 3 or 4, highlights of his career is all anyone ever knows. But if you go back and watch the Legends, or I guess it was called the Old Timers game during the NBA All-Star break, back in 1984, Bob Pettit was playing, and the announcers, the other players, when they were interviewing him, they kept asking, who's the guy out here that could still play today? Like if he was in this modern time, being 1984, who would still be great? And everyone said Bob Pettit. He was the unanimous decision that, Bob Pettit's game, if he played then, as opposed to 30 years earlier, he would have been just as good. But people have forgotten that. So it's really Dirk, who people know, against a shadow.
Alrighty. Nick, welcome. My opponent, Rex, I'm going to mute you because you got to echo. And then Nick, welcome. What are your thoughts on this debate in total between Bob Pettit and Dirk Nowitzki? I just want to address Cardell in the chat. I did a Bob Cousy versus Steph Curry debate with him, and he says, "Sup, Bob Cousy fan. I just want to let you know I'm also a Bob Pettit fan." Anyway, Cardell is rooting for you apparently on this one, as I defeated him in that debate.
All right, awesome.
But what are your thoughts on this debate, Nick?
I was a little hesitant because I think this is a little bit of an uphill battle for me on paper, but with the definition of greater or using greatness more or less, I think gives me a little bit more of wiggle room here to try and wedge Dirk in above Pettit a little bit. So I think this is probably one of the closer debates we've had where it really is. I think they're kind of similar in a way, just different eras, kind of different styles. But I think on paper and their legacy, I think they're very similar, very close.
Awesome. We haven't discussed this, but you have the choice of whether you'd like to go first or second. Would you like to go first or second?
I always like to go first, you know that.
Alrighty. We got the clock up here for the people to follow along. We've got the fight bell, and we've got the rounds, 3-minute rounds. We'll have a 10-second primer before the first round goes. Are you ready, Nick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty.
Okay, firstly, I want to say, I kind of mentioned in the intro, I took this debate out of pride and loyalty for my boy Dirk. And I do acknowledge that on paper, this is a bit of an uphill battle. Pettit essentially has the better points per game and rebounds per game. He also has 2 MVPs to Dirk's 1. So on paper, this is a little bit of a struggle, I think. But I'm going to do my best here. In contrast, though, Dirk was obviously a much more efficient player, was clearly the better shooter, more effective shooter. I do think he brought more for the defense to have to worry about and look at. I think his ability to stretch and things of that nature, I think does give him a little bit of an edge in terms of maybe fits he could bring to the defense. Again, he was part of the 50-40-90 club. He essentially clears Pettit in all efficiency ratings and stats across the board, as well as maybe just by a percentage or less, he missed being in the 50-40-90 club there for like another 2 or 3 years. So I think Dirk does clear him on efficiency and effectiveness, maybe you could say. But we do need to focus on the term greater here. I think if I ultimately want to get a W in this debate, ultimately, I think to have greatness is to distinguish yourself from the average group, whether through size or magnitude in skill, achievement, or accomplishments. And I think I'm going to have to center it around that because I do think once I started diving in a little more, I do think Dirk had a greater career and maybe is a greater player. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attack Pettit's 1 ring because I think that's one of the main pillars that allows him to be compared to Dirk or be put into the upper echelon with the other greats. Many people would consider Dirk's ring to be the heaviest or bloodiest of all time. It's certainly a top 2 or 3. In comparison, again, I'm not an era hater. You guys know that, but I've always considered that once a team expands and it's able to saturate, having to go through 4 teams in the playoffs instead of 3 or 2 will always be more difficult. In Pettit's era, at least when he won his ring, 6 of the 8 teams made the playoffs. The first round was a best of 3, meaning that at most you'd have to win 10 games compared to Dirk's 16. But St. Louis got a first round bye, meaning Pettit only had to win 8 games and face the Detroit Pistons team in the second round that was essentially in the bottom half of all team statistics and categories, meaning that they weren't even one of the better teams in the league. Besides Rex, I'm not even sure people could name 3 players from that Detroit Pistons team. And further, Bill Russell got hurt in Game 4 of the finals. And if Russell doesn't get hurt, we might not even be having this conversation with him having a ring. You're muted.
So you're talking about the efficiency. What about the equipment? There's no breakaway rims. Defense, Bob Pettit scored 19 out of 21 points against Bill Russell in the NBA Finals to win it, the time that he won it, the last 19 out of 21 points against arguably the greatest defensive player of all time. So he had the game. Pettit wasn't available to be in the 50-40-90 club, and it wasn't a thing when he was in the league. Pettit, they both had 1 ring, and a ring is a ring. Pettit also went to 3 NBA Finals versus Dirk's 2. But greatness is defined You have your definition. This is mine. It's defined as the ability, quality, or eminence considerably above the normal or average. And I'm going to focus my argument on these three aspects of basketball. He's got more convictive evidence than Dirk as a greater basketball player due to his dominance. Dominance is the easiest way to distinguish all-time greats against each other because it takes away rules, players play, and other factors. And the convergence of all these factors, meaning to move toward the same point and come closer together and meet during his basketball career, Pettit has more convictive convergence of these factors than Dirk. For Pettit's top 3 years in his career, he won the All-Star MVP, All-NBA First Team, and was an All-Star in all of them. And for 2 of these 3 years, he won a scoring title and an MVP along with those above. And for 1 of these 3 years, he was also a rebounding title on top of it for those 2. And then for that 3rd best year, he won the NBA championship. Dirk never had such convictive dominance in any season. He never won an All-Star MVP or any of the 5 major stat titles. So Bob Pettit also had greater ability than Dirk Nowitzki. Ability meaning the talent, skill, or proficiency in a particular area is dominated heads up by Bob Pettit with few exceptions, and is centered around his individual playing statistical output. Firstly, like I mentioned, Pettit won 2 scoring titles against guys like Elgin Baylor, Paul Arizin, who was a 2-time scoring champion, and Dolph Schayes, and 1 rebounding title against guys like Maurice Stokes, who was a 1-time champion, and Dolph Schayes, and Neil Johnson, who were 1-time rebounding champions. Dirk never dominated in his career with a statistical title in 21 years. And for career-high single-game records, Pettit outperformed Dirk in points and rebounds with a wide 35-23 difference in rebounds, respectively. And then Pettit outperformed Dirk in all per-game regular season stats, notably outscoring Dirk 26.4 to 20.7 and 16.2 to 7.5 rebounds per game. And for their best regular season stats, he outperformed rebounds 20.3 to 9.9, and this scoring was done prior to the invention of the three-point line, and Dirk famously utilized it for his success. In addition, Pettit is one of 3 players to have multiple 50-point and 25 rebound games, joining Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor.
Okay, I'll let you go a little bit if you wanted to because I ran a little over.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, again, I understand a ring is a ring completely, but there is context, right? Like, there is a reason why people say Dirk's ring is one of the greatest of all time. So, I know we've had this back and forth. I don't believe all rings are created equal. I do think you get credit for winning a ring. I'll never take it away from someone. But to say that if Bill Russell wouldn't have gotten hurt in Game 4 when the series was split 2-2, I think it's fair to say that maybe Pettit doesn't even win that ring. I understand he did good against Bill Russell, but if he doesn't have that ring and Bill Russell stays healthy, again, I'm not even sure we're having this conversation, right? And that is ultimately to say that in terms of the greatness of the biggest thing they ever achieved, Dirk's greater or single greatest thing he ever did, I think outweighs Pettit's single greatest thing that he ever did. And now, obviously, I'm going to move on to some statistics here. Again, Dirk several times led the league in PER, win shares, offensive win shares per 48, box plus minus, offensive box plus minus. So again, yes, I understand Dirk's points per game or rebounds per game were never league leading, but he did several times lead the league in several statistical categories across the board. And again, for the main categories, there's not much for me to argue. Pettit was a better scorer and a more effective rebounder. I think the assists are comparable. I would actually assume, this is something that might be a little controversial, is I do not think Pettit was necessarily a great defender. I don't think he would have made any all NBA defensive teams. He probably would have been a slightly better defender than Dirk, but I don't think it's necessarily that big of a difference as people would like to think. Pettit was not known for his verticality. He was good at positioning, but I think their blocks and assists are essentially comparable if we were to be able to track his blocks. Let's see. And again, as I mentioned, Dirk was a much more efficient player. I understand it didn't have the 50-40-90 club, but looking at Pettit's free throw percentage alone, he never would have made the 50-40-90 club. I mean, in any era, I just don't think if you shoot 70-75% in one era, I don't think it gets up to 90 in another era. So another thing I wanted to say is Dirk received MVP votes in 12 years versus Pettit receiving them in 9. I think Dirk had a longer period of being great amongst his peers than Pettit did, even though I know Pettit only played 11 years to Dirk's 21. Pettit also had another All-Star or two on his team every year he played. Dirk only ever had one other All-Star on his team for 5 years during his 21-year career, which I think shows he did a little more with less.
All right, so you talked about Bill Russell getting hurt, but Bob Pettit still won. And we can talk about what ifs about the championships. What if LeBron didn't have famous meltdowns or getting beat by Jason Terry? We're just talking about what is, and it sounds like you're making that a crux of your argument. We don't know. We don't have the evidence in respect to the defense awards or blocks or steals. It's hypotheticals. It's speculation. Efficiency is a part of the game, but what were the results of that? Looking at the achievements, the awards, the titles, all the things associated with it that are arguably greater than just plain efficiency. Bob Pettit was a better quality player than Dirk Nowitzki. Quality is the degree which an object or entity satisfies a specified set of attributes or requirement, largely identified through the success someone helps bring to their team. And Bob Pettit's specific individual numbers were described in the last round. I'm going to describe furthermore how Bob Pettit had better quality contributions to his team. So Bob Pettit's playoff win percentage was 53.4 to Dirk's 47.6% for wins. And Dirk made it to two more finals appearances than Bob Pettit made it to two more finals appearances than Dirk Nowitzki, 4 total. 2 to 3 final series, the Pettit and the Hawks lost, they got to a Game 7. Dirk's loss, he got to Game 6. Pettit's most impressive game was his Game 7 win to clinch the title against Boston Celtics, headed by Bill Russell, with a 50.19 rebound game, which is the most impressive in respect to stats in a single game for both of them. Pettit had 12 30-point games, a 40-point game, and a 50-point game in his finals record, and 5 20-plus rebounds per game. In addition, he only had 2 games where he had under 10 rebounds per game during the final. In contrast, Dirk Nowitzki had only 2 30-point games, never scoring more than 40 points on his finals record, never achieving 20 rebounds, and recording under 10 rebounds in a game 5 times he played. And Pettit outperformed Dirk in all per-game playoff stats, with the widest margin being rebounds, with 14.8 to 10. For their best playoff high per game averages, Pettit outscored Dirk 31.8 to 28.4 in scoring, and rebounds 17.6 to 13.1 respectively. In addition to this, you can compare Pettit and Dirk's advanced analytics that are available for Pettit, because a lot of them that you mentioned aren't available. But Pettit outperforms Dirk in the regular season with win shares per 48. I think he's number 11 all time with this, with .213 to .193, and with the PER 25.4 to 22.4. And all of Pettit did, and Pettit did this in 10 less regular seasons and 6 less playoff appearances. To be clear, Bob Pettit accomplished deeper playoff runs with his team in less time and was more dominant and impactful as an individual in less time. Pettit had more quality contribution to his team's success than Dirk Nowitzki. And even talking about some of these efficiency, again, I want to reiterate the equipment of this stuff.
The one thing I also want to say is, in terms of their numbers as well, Pettit's numbers dropped when he got into the playoffs, and Dirk's only got better, which I think is a aspect that needs to be brought up. But actually, for my last one, again, we're going to talk about greatness, which can kind of be nuanced a little bit. I know we have definitions, but exactly what does that mean? So I'm going to reiterate one time that I think Dirk's greatest achievement in his run in 2011, I think clears anything Pettit has done by a country mile. Like, I honestly don't think it's close, having to go through 4 teams, 4 wins each round versus, Pettit had to win essentially 8 games. And again, with Bill Russell getting hurt in Game 3, I just think that, it's not his fault, right? I'm not trying to poo-poo on him, but it is context and it is important, right? But for my last segment, I actually want to kind of go to their off-the-court legacy. Pettit had a big influence on bringing weightlifting and strength training to the game, which I think is very important. He also was kind of the first big guy to play a little positionless basketball. Again, not to the degree Dirk did, but he was one of the guys who revolutionized that in a way. But ultimately for Dirk, right, I think he when you talk about people who have changed the game, I think that is a great, another sort of avenue you can go down for greatness. How much did you actually change or impact the game? I think Dirk also clears Pettit in this category, right? being a truly 3-level scorer as a big man, a true 7-footer who could stretch the floor and hit threes like he did is, has completely changed the game now. I mean, if Curry's kind of done that for guards and people in general, along with like Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, obviously, but for big men and what they can do now and what they practice and what they're expected to be able to do to at a minimum, shooting is now one of those things. And I understand there was trailblazers before him, but Dirk was a proof of concept that you could do it. You could be effective and you could lead your team as a shooting big man. And I think he really changed the game in that respect. Obviously, and another one is that he threw off the criticism and kind of broke the mold that you could draft a European player and as well as other guys from around the league, and you could draft them with a high draft pick and they could lead your team to a ring if they have the proper skill set and you invest in them. That Dirk proved to people that he wasn't soft, that these guys can play, that their skill set and the way that they play can be effective. And if you put a proper team around them, it is more than enough to win a ring, right? So I think he has opened the door to an entirely new worldwide generation of players and skill sets that we see in the game today. So I would also like to chip that in terms of greatness in the league.
So you talk about Dirk's greatest achievement being in 2011. I talked about all of Pettit's individual performances and greatness in the playoffs, which in my perspective dwarf Dirk's performances. You're criticizing Pettit's time and space, and it's your opinion of how the playoffs went, but you can't blame it. He did what he did with the people and the rules in front of him. And I'm going to talk about, you're talking about how Dirk influenced people. I'm going to talk about how Dirk was influenced by Bob Pettit. Now, you're talking about true 7-footer, but Bob Pettit is argued as the first stretch 4, what Dirk is often classified by. And Bob Pettit did take jump shots as well. But thanks for the debate. Bob Pettit is more eminent than Dirk Nowitzki. Eminence meaning a position or prominence or superiority applies to Bob Pettit with his on-court award reputation and contributions to basketball. A lot of these are referenced to intangibles and prominence in the NBA at the time that they played versus their contemporaries. First, Bob Pettit was awarded 10 first-team All-NBAs in 11 seasons, earning an All-NBA award every year he played in the NBA. Make this clear, first-team All-NBA award represents the considered best players by position for the season, while the other All-NBA represent consolation prizes. So, Dirk was awarded 4 first-team All-NBAs and 12 All-NBAs in total within a 21-year-old career, outperforming Dirk in first-team awards by nearly 3 times and more than 2 times. Bob Pettit was an All-Star 11 times, again getting this award every year he played in the NBA. Dirk was a 14-time All-Star in his 21-year career. Bob Pettit has a record 4-time All-Star MVPs where Dirk won 0. And for the naysayers, 3 of these awards were given to him while Bill Russell was in the league, 2 of these awards with Elgin Baylor, and 1 of these awards were when Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West were in the league. And additionally, Bob Pettit won the Most Valuable Award twice to Dirk Nowitzki's 1 time, with 1 of these awards ahead of Bill Russell. And Dirk Nowitzki won 2 MVPs in his total, No, he only won the 1. This is all separated from the eminence he has from his individual ability and quality toward the NBA, as I discussed in the prior 2 rounds. Bob Pettit was also the first player to reach 20,000 points and was at the time the leading scorer in all of NBA history. And Pettit also won the 1955 Rookie of the Year award. Dirk didn't win Rookie of the Year. Bob Pettit is considered the first face-up power forward in the NBA. Stretch 4 is talked about. Ironically, paving the way for some of the claims that you were making about the influence that he had over the NBA. He defeated Bill Russell, arguably the greatest champion of all time in the NBA, and he took them to the finals multiple times. And his career length appears to not show the longevity of Dirk Nowitzki. I argue that his sustained excellence with his awards shows that he's longer better. Bob Pettit had greater ability, quality, and eminence than Dirk. He was more dominant than Dirk, and Bob Pettit was greater than Dirk Nowitzki.
I will say one thing. I think his first MVP, Bill Russell, was I don't know if you said that or not, but
I didn't hear what you said. What'd you say?
I think for Pettit's first MVP, Bill Russell was not in the league yet.
Yeah, no, I said for 1 of them.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to put...
I love the 3x3 format so much better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put up a poll for the audience to say who you thought won. The smiley face will be me with Bob Pettit. The laughing, crying face will be with for Dirk Nowitzki and NMB Sports here. Got a 1-minute poll. I'm going to start it now. I don't know how this is going to work, but please vote on it. While this is happening, T Perfect, please give your thoughts on who won the debate.
So I think this is a good debate. Overall, there was like I said, like both these guys to some degree, I think fly under the radar when people are talking about ranking overall or their favorite players, things like that, and especially when it comes to Bob Pettit, right? Like, but for the most part, both these guys are also rans when you're talking about just the players that we usually hear about today. But I thought that Nick got off to a fantastic start. Pretty much what I was looking for him to do, like when you're gonna come at someone like Bob Pettit, like who we even talked about, was a little bit of statistically, and how are you gonna attack it? What angle are you gonna use? And he started bringing up their ring counts, the same. Dirk went through, had to go through more teams as opposed to in more playoff games, drastically more as opposed to Pettit. Talked a little bit about the competition, and then Nick was alluding to obviously that 2011 run, which is historic, and talked about how Russell was hurt up, things of that nature. And so I thought that Nick really crafted a great first round when talking about what he was going to get to, how he was going to attack. He brought up some good points, and then Dart responded with hey, a ring is a ring, which I don't really like that assertion, because sure, it's all a ring on paper, but there is a context when you had, especially when you're talking about things that where you had to go through more teams, you had to play more games. Obviously, it's not a knock on those players back then. You just play who's in front of you, but when I think it's kind of dismissive, just kind of assert, hey, whatever, it's the same thing, because there are degrees of difficulty, right? Just objectively. And so he responded to that. Dart also, was countering with, hey, more B awards, more all-stars, during his career. Dirk never led, the league in a major physical category. Pettit was better in both stats. Things that we, knew, but Dirk really did a good job of emphasizing that. I did give the round to Nick, though, just because I thought that he came out firing exactly how I would look for him to kind of, attack and, formally start his argument. It was kind of, playing up to Dirk's strengths, which, of course, was the competition, that great run, maybe, better competition. And so he, really loved it. Round 2 and round 3, I thought, was really where Dart took over, because Nick, I was looking for him to kind of build off that and kind of delve into that and, build on his success. But he instead, he kind of said, Pettit's ring was because of Bill getting hurt. He talked about that for a while. He just really said, again, Dirk's, the accomplishment was better than Bob's. Didn't really elaborate on that too much. He said Dirk led in many advanced stats, which is true. It's great, but also, how are you going to kind of fold that into your overall? I mean, he did also mention, and I really hope you elaborate on this just slightly. I get there's a time frame, but he mentioned how Bob Pettit had more help than he, per year, things of that nature. Just mentioned that. Talked about Dirk's longevity just briefly. But there was a lot of meat left on the bone there. I thought that, I was really hoping for him to kind of, talk about what else Bob had, and that would help him with Dirk, things of that nature. Dirk came in and really kind of capitalized that and said, you can't really use what ifs. Pettit had a player, and then you just start, here's some cold hard facts. Pettit had a better playoff win percentage, more finals appearances in fewer time, which I thought was a great point. He really was, giving it to Bill Russell, things of that nature. Way more like, 30 plus, 20 plus games during the career. Bob, he really just kind of emphasized, how much more of a statistically dominant player Bob Pettit was, really during the meat of his career. And also how he had really, he also cleared Dirk in many advanced stats for the career. Also, he talked about how Bob Pettit had deeper playoff runs than Dirk. I get it. It's the truncated, rounds and things like that. But I think that is worth being, mentioned, that he was deeper he was way better against what he had to face than Dirk was, generally speaking here. So I give that round to Dart. Round 3, I was kind of looking for crescendo for both debaters here. Nick brought up, and I was like, this is a great start. Brought up how Bob Pettit was his slight playoff dropper when it came to some of his statistics. While Dirk's got better, I was really looking for him to kind of pound on that one. But then he pivoted to, okay, let's talk about the off-court accomplishments, which is totally fair, and then he kind of also says, hey, Dirk changed the game, and he was a better field level scorer. One of the first big men to truly do that, which is a great topic, but I think that when he leaves a lot of time to kind of expand on that. Establish confidence in European players, but I think is a fantastic point also. Dirk was probably one of the very first, as Nick pointed out, to kind of be that European guy who was the cornerstone of the franchise for his almost arguably his entire career. But there wasn't really a lot of cohesive theme around. I was really looking for a lot of the build on some of those great points even earlier. Dirk came back and said, you know what, Bob was maybe not the same degree, but he was arguably a position with stretch big man. 10 All-NBAs in 11 years. All first teams, with Dirk was awarded 4 first team. He really pounded on that, just kind of emphasized how much more dominant Pettit was. More accolades, as far as, the time he played. The other MVP, Rookie of the Year. And then he, argued that sustained dominance beats just playing many more years. And that alone wouldn't be a good argument. But he prefaced that, obviously, with here's what Bob Pettit did during his limited time. And that alone, beat any prime time that Dirk had. Certainly just, the other 4 or 5 years when he was, kind of just along for the ride. So that being said, I did give the debate to Dart 2-1. I thought fantastic points on both ends, something you don't really hear about. Casuals talking about for both players, and you could tell that both fans of both guys, and I really enjoyed this debate. I thought it was very close. I thought round 2 could have been either direction, but I just thought Dart was a little bit more well-rounded, kind of stuck to his points a little bit better, but great debate all around.
All right, Politicus Rex, how did you judge this debate?
You're muted, Rex. Rex, no!
He's dead.
He's been assassinated.
Rex.
He was about to drop. There he is.
Rex.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
So you heard none of what I just said. Great. Very, very close, I thought. The only things I can really say is I think Dirk took it, but only because Nick used a bit more opinion, which has no place in a debate. And he left out one main thing when arguing Dirk's legacy is as a European player, up until Jokic, who's playing right now, if you take him out, Dirk's really the greatest European player we have seen. And that's how you fight the Pettit legacy, is talk more about Dirk as far as the international stage, and you really left a lot untouched there.
All right. So, as a note, the poll was a tie. So that's kind of what T Perfect and Rex were saying. It was a close match. The poll from the chat, it was a tie between me and Nick. Nick, what do you have to say about this debate?
Yeah, in terms of what Rex said, I thought he's right. I didn't outright say it, but I thought it was kind of like self-explanatory that he's like it. But yeah, besides maybe Jokic, he is the greatest European player ever. And I think opinion does have a place in debates. It's just you have to back up your opinion, right? And so I don't think I said anything as an opinion that wasn't sort of quantifiable in some way, or that you couldn't kind of back up with some kind of statistical or just, relative reasoning or logic, right? And then actually the last thing I wish I would have said, or maybe it's just a follow-up to the debate. I wasn't thinking it during the debate, but being, look, there's only 8 teams during Pettit's time, right? Which, again, I'm not an era hater, but being on an all-star team or like all NBA when there's 8 teams versus 30, I maybe should have like brought that in somehow. That I'm not quite sure. Again, if all NBAs from all times are weighed the same, right? If you only have to be, let's just say, there's 40 starters in an 8-league team or an 8-team league, versus having 30 teams of 5 starters, you have to, versus 150 players, right? Then I guess, that I think that does change how heavy or how much, a singular all NBA or all star would be weighed, right? So I could have brought that up a little bit more, and but yeah, that's about it. I think they kind of recapped it pretty well.
I disagree with that premise, but I can understand
Rex,
the argument.
we've had this. Remember, we had this argument about how many teams and players and eras, and like how much does it mean? I understand it's kind of like a relative argument, right? So like I'm not gonna like die on that hill, but maybe it's something I could have argued.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
The point of that is if you're first team, if you're the starter, it doesn't matter how many more teams they bring in, the players will be less than the best player in the league. So it wouldn't make a difference if they're voted the starter. Because number one is still number one, whether you have 8 teams or 437 teams. If you make more teams, the people you then bring into the league to fill those teams are lesser than the number one guy. So the number one guy doesn't change. If
yeah,
you're
my
the
only
starter,
rebuttal. Yeah, but my only pushback to that would be, when the NBA was first starting out, there obviously was not hardly, if any, like national or international influence. So again, I don't know what is the level of difference when you open up more teams, but you're drawing players from all over the world. Is that really watering it down or not? And then I'd also mention that once expansion has been established and the league is allowed to saturate a little bit, and again, the best players then tend to rise to the top after you expand teams. I think it's fair to say that at that point you are kind of leveling it back out to getting the best players in the world. But again, there's no way I don't think we could ever put that on paper somehow in a formula and figure that out. So,
Can I accept my flowers and take my victory lap? Yes. No. So this is, I think, the 3rd time we've debated, Nick, in this capacity, and this is my first time winning. Thank you for the debate. I do agree that.
What were the other ones? We did the wrestling.
We did the wrestling one, which I think I was, I think I was robbed on, but that's besides the point. And then, which I did lose that. And then we did a basketball debate during the debate league. I just don't remember what it was about, but I remember I lost.
Yeah, that wrestling one was really fun. We should maybe do it again. I had a really fun doing that.
Oh yeah. I was pulling out Hulk Hogan's win percentage. But no, but
Hogan's
I think
offensive win shares per.
But I was going to say, I think that this was an uphill battle for you, in my opinion. I think Bob Pettit, from my estimation, is considerably a greater basketball player across all time than Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk was one of my favorite players growing up, and then into my adulthood. However, I personally think it's a very hard uphill battle. So I appreciate your attempt at surmounting the mountain known as Bob Pettit in this debate. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, and I agree.
Yeah.
I think Pettit was more dominant during his career than Dirk. I think I wouldn't argue against that.
Yeah, I personally have him as the second greatest power forward of all time. And if you don't consider Tim Duncan a power forward, then I think he's arguably the greatest power forward of all time. So, yeah, that's my perspective of it. But
yeah, he has impressive stats for sure.
yeah.
Pettit versus Elvin Hayes.
I mean, Elvin Hayes is great. I still think that Pettit takes the mark. But you'd have to argue Elvin Hayes in a different capacity and talking more totals. Like he was dominant with the defense, and then the prolonged aspects of what he accumulated with his points and rebounds and blocks. I think
no ring.
Yeah, he does.
He won with the Bullets, but
did he?
Yes, 1978.
Yeah, so
Don't try and play a Bullets fan like that.
yeah,
It was our one
right.
moment. Leave it alone.
They beat the Sonics.
Who then came back the
Very
next
good.
year and beat them in the rematch.
yeah. All right, so I guess just to take this out, T Perfect. What are you? I know I asked prior to this debate, but what are your thoughts, just holistically, with these two players? Do you think it's a close matchup in between these guys, or do you think that Bob Pettit considerably is considerably greater than Dirk Nowitzki?
Oh, me? Okay.
Yes.
I thought that. I mean, like I said, I think that like just coming in, it was kind of like the Kevin Durant Larry Bird debate to me a little bit, where like Larry Bird, you look on paper and he has Durant in a few stats, like the number of stats, things like that, and that like you could look at them being more dominant, things of that nature. But then you kind of have to really dig deeper into their career. I think that, I mean, in like the different era thing is tough. And I think that, Pettit has a great argument for me that are greater just above the stats, the same ring count. It's tough to really put that above. A lot of the points that you brought up, I think that it really has an argument for being greater than Dirk. But, it's just also on the flip side, when you talk about, and I thought, like I said, like Nick really got a great jump on that in round one. He was started talking about, how many people consider that the greatest title run of all time in 2011. And, consider that the era where he was playing against some of the best competition of all time, regardless of era. Like he had to go through the Duncans, the best version of the Suns. There, a lot of times the Spurs or the Kobe's Lakers, things of that nature. Like he was in the fight, and he did that versus maybe the best iteration of some of these teams that we've seen, that year. And so, I mean, you could really, it's very rare that I'll ever be like, hey, give me this guy over this guy, just based purely upon, some of their playoff runs, things like that, without discounting everything else. But it's a total toss up to me. If someone says I think it's greater, you would just have to lay it out and kind of, make your argument like you guys did as to why. But if someone says I like Dirk over Bob Pettit, and this is why, I think he went through way harder war zones. Didn't win all the time, but the level of competition was greater for these reasons. I wouldn't be mad at that, but obviously Pettit, cleared and was, I think, a more dominant player overall. So I wasn't mad at either way is fine with me.
Rex, what are your thoughts? I know you were talking about you were making it seem like it's not really a close discussion between the two on who's greater. Can you elaborate more on why, or if I'm
When
mistaken?
did I say that?
I said, or if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I actually think this is very close, because when people talk about Pettit's legacy, that's in America. Dirk's legacy is worldwide, and in Europe it's huge, and in Germany he's the man. So you just can't discount the rest of the world because the NBA only plays in 2 countries.
The NBA World Championship, Rex.
Yeah. Oh, I am aware. And Dirk has one.
He does.
But I think Dirk was absolutely fantastic. I think Dirk hurt himself career-wise by staying with the Mavericks. But that's business. That's the choice he took. We now know he took it because, Cuban paid him a couple dozen $1 million after he retired to make up for the the shortages he took in his contract.
He stayed for me, Rex.
Do what?
He stayed for me.
Oh, is that what it could have been? But no, I think it's actually a lot closer than people think because, you see, I'm old enough to remember when Bird came around and was the guy at Indiana State, and all you heard was Bird, 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 Bird. And then when he got in the NBA and the mystique continued, there was never a chink in the armor until, the back injury. And we used to talk on the playground. Can you imagine a guy that could shoot like Bird on the perimeter, but at 7 foot? Do you think we'll ever see that? I mean, that was the unicorn. That is what people wanted to see. Do you think now that we got this 3-point line and you got Bird out here winning 3-point contests 3 in a row at 6'9", can you imagine a 7-footer that could do that? And then here comes Dirk. And that's something, the perspective I don't think a lot of y'all understand is Dirk was what we were waiting for. And my generation, we got a lot of respect for Dirk because that was what we always wondered, would we see it? Now that the game has gone global, will we see that person? Like, first you get Hakeem that comes from across the planet, right? And, okay, well, here's a center. Okay, that's a center. That's a post-up, position. Will we ever see someone facing the basket on the world stage that comes into the NBA and is that unicorn-type player that we've never seen before? A real contribution to the game by a foreign nation, bringing in something we've never seen.
Yep.
Well said.
Alrighty. So with that, it seems like nobody's really calling up here. That's okay. I want to thank all the gifters for, I guess, the cumulative 79 cents or so from True to King. Sent, I don't know, dude, TikTok stuff. Thank you either way. But he sent me a donut, some 23 roses, I don't know. My Talk is Different also sent me a bunch of different stuff. Fourth Quarter Steez and T Perfect. Thank you.
Fourth Quarter Steez.
Thank you for the 1 rose. I appreciate it. I'm not entirely sure what this all means other than it says I've earned 79 cents. But thank you. I don't entirely know what they all mean. But thank you all for what you've gifted in respect to this. If you're watching this, or if you watch it back, please follow these gentlemen on the panel right here with T Perfect, Politicus Rex, NNMB Sports. I thought it was a great debate. T Perfect, you have any final words for the people? Nothing heard. Politicus Rex.
I would only say that the one debate you could possibly wrangle me into would be the whole back in the day playoff scenario.
Oh, nice.
That it was so much easier. I absolutely would love to have that debate because that is probably the most misconstrued of all of the, back generations, this and that. That's even more so than the plumbers. Because the plumbers is obviously wrong. but they just say it to dig at you. The whole playoff thing, I'd really like to explain that at some point because so few people understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it is, especially with the considerations of facing the same teams, scouting them better because, for one, you're playing them more often, and then you got the top-heavy talent in respect to the world capacity of how the game was played back then. So I'm in agreement. I won't debate you on it unless nobody else has the guts to. But otherwise, I agree.
I'll do it.
Nice. Nick versus Rex, part 2. Nice. Well, Politicus Rex, NMB Sports, that's a debate up for the near term. T Perfect, I saw you dropped off and came back. Thank you for the Rex. Got any last words for the people?
Yeah. Hey, fantastic debate. And it's like I said before, like when we were doing StreamYard, we want to get everyone up here, right? We want to get like tons of different matchups, things like that. And it's really interesting, like, because I like these debates because we've all maybe thought about them. Like that, it's just really interesting to hear them put to form and see how each person crafts their debate. And, that's what I like most about it. You learn some things you maybe didn't think of, some of the context, things like that. But I can't wait to do it again versus whoever. But, really great debate today.
All right, Nick, what do you got for the people?
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. NNB Sports, you can find me on any of the platforms. So I enjoyed it. Fun as always.
Yeah, and particularly follow my old friend here, NMB Sports, from the Tug days. But yeah, he's got a lot of good edits. He's got a lot of good sports takes. I enjoy watching your TikTok movie edits. Those are hilarious.
The edits, I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, if people go to my YouTube channel, like my first videos I ever made were during COVID because I was just bored. Mm-hmm. And I just always liked editing and putting funny things together, or I just like the idea of editing something and making it look cool, and that's how I got started. And so that's just kind of what I like doing, and I actually fell into debates more than the edits. I started out doing edits, and then debates just kind of became another thing I started doing. But yeah, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. But yeah, again, my last words are check these guys out. It was fun as always. I can't wait to see Rex get back into the squared circle. Put him on an AI. Put him on an AI. I don't want to see that at all.
Let's go.
Yep. Make him like absolutely yoked or something. Like make him like a monster.
I will. I'll make it. I'll do that.
You got to get our what I think we had the back of the day of the what is it, the score or the cards or the profiles for each debater, like their one's lost and things like that.
Oh yeah,
cards,
that was
then,
great.
Like, make it a magic card with like their strengths or abilities or something like that. That'd be pretty funny too.
He had that. That was great.
Yeah. I'll start it back up. My talk is different. First, I want to. I see you here. You said great debate style. Thank you. Please, if you're interested in debating on this platform, it doesn't have to be against me. It could be against T Perfect. I'm sure Nick will face you. Rex, he doesn't really like to debate other than certain niche things. But if you want to debate somebody, I will host it for sure, because I personally think that this debate format is the best debate format on TikTok and all of social media for sports debates. I'm a little biased because it's me, but I don't think anyone has a cleaner, more readable and understandable understanding of where the rounds are. They don't have the bells and whistles, particularly the bells, in respect to their debates in the round switching over. So yeah, if you want to come up, please do. And again, thank you for all the gifts that you gave me. I appreciate it very much. So yeah, just contact me if you want to get it together. And that goes for everyone. Like T Perfect was saying, just please contact me, contact T Perfect, and we'll get this all together. So the last thing I want to say, as I always like to say and tell everybody, is that Michael Jordan fans are the best.